Okay, welcome to our Buckminster Fuller study group for the weekend of August 24th, 25th. And we are going through a Fuller explanation and written by Amy Edmondson. And I think we've actually finished all the prefaces and the forewords and the notes to reader, and we're actually going to begin chapter 1 today. So that's kind of exciting. I'm looking forward to that. Richard, how are you feeling, and what do you expect for today?
Uh, I'm feeling pretty good. I came off of uh, several sessions today. One was one of my regular World Weavers, Bucky kinds of sessions, and another one was a 2-day conference on different approaches to suicide prevention and that sort of thing. Um, and but on the Bucky one, um, we really practice Bohemian dialogue as best we can. But today, probably because of the aftermath of the political convention last week, um, we we kind of diverted into something we sort of said we don't divert into. We don't get into any kind of political kind of talk, but it started to happen, and and very quickly, um, one of the one of the participants acted more as an observer, if you want, but very quickly he saw um, the dialogue sort of principle falling into talking over each other,
Mhm.
and not pausing and listening. Or it's the typical kind of I'm going to best you with my argument.
Yeah.
Uh, and then we pulled back and slid into our usual dialogical sort of way of discussing things. But for me, what it was proof of for me anyway, at that point, was just how difficult it is to hold on to the Bohemian dialogue and to respect the idea that even if it's two really strong opposing kinds of ideas, that if you let them both come into the table, something could could emerge that will end up being different or better than either one of them by themselves. Um, and and I also realized that as we talked about emergence, we were also talking about evolution, and so it kind of connected with the idea that emergence coming out of two or more things um, actually could be the the process part of evolving from something to something different or something um, more adaptable, if you want, in living systems. Anyway, so um, this book is something that I really am looking forward to. I'm reading ahead a little bit because I'm still working my way around this idea of this ratio and volumes and rational uh, irrational number ratios and whole number ratios, and so there's a chapter several ways into the book that deals with volumes, and it's been a great help already, just getting me uh, working on that ratio transformation that we were struggling with in the other discussion on Wednesdays. So anyway, Anne, how are you feeling, and what are you looking forward to tonight?
I'm very, very happy to be able to start with your chapter 1. That's it. And one of the books that I've wanted to know more about is synergetics, and the fact that she's gonna make it a lot more accessible to people. That is exciting for me. So yeah, looking forward to that. Yeah. So Joe, how do you feel, and what would you like to take away today?
I'm feeling good. I too share your enthusiasm, man, as far as, kind of getting started with chapter one. And just having Bucky's language a little bit more accessible, but then, to make sure that I don't necessarily no, I definitely want to get back into what Bucky was saying to just some ideas that you guys were just talking about in terms of wholes and happenings, and how that relates to language. And that's something I was dealing about today, and things that Bucky says actually become a lot more clear. So it's going to be good to be able to read synergetics well, yeah, hopefully. I mean, after going through a full explanation, and I think that this is actually going to be a really rich experience for me personally. I know. Steve, how do you feel? And what would you like to take away from today?
Well, I too am looking forward to all this. I've been reading ahead too. Not really reading ahead. I just like the pictures. And and already a couple of the pictures have helped me out a lot in terms of understanding what's going on. So, or having a better understanding of what's going on. I would like to have this issue about volumes and rational numbers get resolved as well. And it's, even though it just seems to be way above me. So I'm really looking at, I'm really anxious to see how everything unfolds, and I'm going to be able to put all this together. Yeah, and so we'll go ahead and get started. I thought it might be helpful kind of to review just the table of contents for this chapter, to give us kind of an overview of what's going on. So I'm going to start by just opening up the table of contents. And I've got to find these buttons. Share. There we go. Okay. Here we go. So as I discussed, we've got our forward here, our preface, our acknowledgments, note to readers, and then we're beginning section one, the introduction. And this is what we're going to be reading today, and I think it'd kind of be helpful. I'll go through this, and then we'll go to the actual page and go from there. So, return to modelability, from geometry to geodesics, a personal perspective, operational mathematics, experimental evidence, nature's coordinate system, universe, generalized principles, and return to modelability. So that's what we're going for. And
Can I make a comment on that?
please.
It's just really a contextual comment in terms of return to modelability. One might sort of say, well, what do you mean return to it? I'm curious as to what that is. What I think he's talking about is that the chemist, chemical scientist by the name of Van Hooft, back in, I think, the 1800s, used tetrahedron models to come up with a new chemical sort of theory or understanding. And out of that, he ended up getting the very first Nobel Prize in chemistry. And then we fast forward up to the 80s and the carbon-60. And the story behind carbon-60 is that they were about to give up on what they were trying to do. And one of them, Professor Smalley, started to work with the paper cutouts of hexagons and pentagons. And he actually made the full circle, if you want, which was the breakthrough. And so out of that modeling, they got the a Nobel Prize for their carbon-60. So I think what this is all about is getting back to the importance of modeling that Van Hooft introduced, and I think he's making the argument that we meaning the scientists of the world, moved away from modeling and into mathematics, and now Amy is going to make the case that about that movement, although I don't think she mentions Van Hoff. And then she's going to make the argument at the end of the chapter for us to return or back to modelability. So that's the exciting part about it for me, is this whole idea of having physical models to help with the learning, the visual model to assist in the learning process.
Yeah, and models by their very nature are more holistic. In math, I start with a 1 and build out from there. And with a model, I've got the whole thing in my hands, and now I start looking at the parts. And at least that's one way to look at modeling. So,
and the other thing that everybody always reminds everybody when they get into modeling, that modeling is a map and not the territory. So it's
right.
It's a model of reality, but it is not reality.
It is not reality. Exactly right. Yeah, beautiful. Cool. Any other comments or thoughts before we move
I'll
on?
just say that, yeah, one of the cool things is probably, is going to be, I think, getting to generalized principles out of that.
Yeah.
Seeing the patterns and things, and then being able to, determine how do we arrive at them, and yeah, I think that that's really an important part of this, as far as as you start to think about things in terms of models, what are the principles that hold them together, and not think in terms, as you were just saying, in terms of just functional mathematics.
Right on. Cool. So if we start this first chapter, as we start the first chapter in the book, it's page 3, after all the introductory Roman numeral pages. And if we am actually able to get through the whole chapter, chapter 1 is 3 through 18. So we'll get as far as we can tonight. I really like rotating reading because I think I like the challenge of reading. And more than that, I like the clarity they get when I hear somebody else screw up the reading.
Yeah,
No.
it's helping other people focus. So it's always a gift. It's always a gift.
So who wants to begin tonight? Oops, I just went too far.
I give it a shot starting.
Okay.
So return to modelability. Comprehension of conceptual mathematics and the return of modelability are among the most critical factors governing humanities. Epochal transition to bumblebee-like self, honey-seeking preoccupation into the realistic prospect of spontaneously coordinate planet society. Buckminster Fuller's energetics explorations in the geometry of thinking.
And this kind of puts together what Richard and I were saying, but Bucky's saying, hey, you got to have the comprehension of conceptual mathematics, and we return back to the model, and now we've got all the tools we need to become critical and be able to put things together. Any other thoughts or comments? Jeez. Amazing how that wants to move ahead. Go ahead, continue if you like.
Sure.
Wow. Hang on a second. I'm still trying to, I'm still learning how to get this thing to go. So we'll see what goes at. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm glad you caught yourself with a try.
Yeah, no kidding.
No, it makes me feel human. Synergetic geometry is the product of a mind as comfortable with mathematical precision as with the intuitive leaps associated with visual and spatial conceptualizing. Sorry. Buckminster Fuller was guided predominantly by intuition throughout his 87 years. Nonetheless, he was entirely at ease with painstaking exactitude of numerical calculation, such as that required in the development of the geodesic dome in the early 1940s, years before the pocket calculator. He don't know. There you go. He produced volumes of intricate trigonometric solutions, manipulating 8-digit numbers with the patience and precision of a monk. However, the peculiar language of Fuller's mathematical writings quickly betrays the intuitive influence and all but conceals that of a hard-nosed engineer. Buckminster Fuller was both the pragmatic Yankee mechanic and the enigmatic mystic, and synergetics is the product of that combination. My pronunciation was a little bit off on that one. Above all, he was driven by curiosity and found nature a far more compelling teacher than the textbooks in his Milton, Massachusetts schoolhouse. Frustrated by the apparent lack of connection between conventional mathematics and reality, young Bucky Fuller adopted his own approach. The resulting self-directed exploration into pattern and structure became the most powerful influence in his remarkable career as an inventor, architect, engineer, and philosopher, and produced a geometrical system that is fascinating in its own right.
You want to do
want
the
me to
first?
read that? Yeah. As mentioned in the note to readers, quotations from Synergetics are followed by a numerical section reference. 216 references to Synergetics 2, append the letter B to the section number.
I guess we'll figure out what that means more.
Yeah,
Any
I just,
comments
I
on
just looked it up, and it's easy to find in Synergetics 1, 21603. And what is quoted in the front of this chapter is the first sentence. Then there's several other sentences in the section.
Okay.
I can actually get to Synergetics and get to 216 really quickly. In the event that reading the actual words might be helpful, let me know and I will go ahead and take the time to do that. Okay, cool. If you want to continue.
Sure. Synergetics is discipline, but hiding behind Fuller's fantastic visions of a sustainable future. The reliable patterns were the source of his unshakable confidence in his design science philosophy, which, in short, upholds the innovative application of the principles governing nature's behavior, can ensure ample life support for all humanity. While many people around the world have been exposed to Fuller's ideas and inventions, few have understood or even been aware of the mathematical principles underlying the elegant efficiency of the structures such as the octatrust and geodesic dome. Happily, these principles are easily accessible once you get into the spirit of Fuller's approach. Synergetics is a hands-on branch of mathematics. However, listening to one of Fuller's all-encompassing lectures, you might wonder when the hands-on part begins. Tangibility is not a prominent feature in his spellbinding discourse, the subject of which is no less than humans in universe. He challenges, in the course of a few hours, age-old assumptions about our lives and institutions, asking us to reconsider the most commonplace aspects of experience. Some of his observations are stated so simply you may find yourself wondering Why haven't I thought about that before? For example, how many of you said to your children, darling, look at the beautiful sun going down, a show of many hands? Well, we've known for 500 years that the sun isn't going down, and yet we consider it practical to keep on lying to our children. Does Santa Claus count in that? I'm just saying. Or when I was born in 1895. Oh, okay, yeah. All right, never mind. When I was born in 1895, I mean, for a moment, I was just thinking about Amy being born, and I was like, whoa, like, that would have been really good aging. When I was born in 1995, reality was everything you could see, smell, touch, and hear. The world was thought of to be absolutely self-evident when I was 3 years old. The electron was discovered. That was the first invisible. It didn't get any of the it didn't get in any of the newspapers. Nobody thought that would be important. Today, 99.99% of everything that affects our lives cannot be detected by the human senses. We live in a world of, and later he takes his keys out
Let's
of.
pause. Let's just pause right there for a second if we can. We live in a
Yeah.
world of
Yeah,
invisible.
that's huge. That is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that goes to that article that I sent around about Fuller being asked who was the most important man in the 20th century, and he named Freud, not Einstein. And the puzzlement was, why would he do that? And that's the answer right there. Because Freud, according to Fuller anyway, introduced us to the sort of subconscious, introduced us to what we can't see. And so it's an interesting, I remember reading that at some earlier point, but in a lot of my development in the work that I've been doing over the years, Freud was not a guy that I revered.
Mm.
And so it's very interesting to see Fuller argue why he thinks he was the most important guy in the 20th century because of this invisibility issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is one of the key ideas, obviously, because then you have this idea of generalized principles and why you rely on them. Is that, you know, you have to fall back on principles, knowing that there is the invisible, the unknown, the unseen. You know, it has a you know, kind of a you know, fundamental role. And I think it's also important also to just mention, you know, kind of a little bit earlier, just how some of Bucky's statements, while some of them can be, you know, the language can be a little bit difficult to parse through, some of the statements are so obvious that you just think about it in those terms. And the reason that's important for children in particular is it kind of changes their orientation in the sense that, well, it's a discovery. And when you discover something like that, you start to say, well, what else can I know? And how else can I look at things differently? And so what it is kind of opening, it changes your perspective. So everything that you had been told that was right previously, well, maybe, you know, just looking at it a little bit differently gives you a better perspective. And it changes your whole approach towards education, learning, and everything. So I think that that's absolutely worth noting as well, is that some of the statements that change our orientation, whether it be at a very, with some of his very more verbose language. It's not verbose, that's not proper. Abstract. And or something very simple.
Yeah. I'm looking at to kind of reinforce what you said, Joe, and comment on the fact that you noticed that I eliminated the word try.
Yeah.
You know, here he is. He says there in that first quote, we say to our children, look at the beautiful sun going down. We consider it practical to keep on lying to our children. And of course, this is the problem. If how would my children's brain be different if I said, look at the sun clips, or notice the rotation of the earth and the position of the sun? I mean, it's so easy to look at the sun setting and at that point create a fog in my brain that allows me to tolerate all sorts of untruths. You know, it's like the first lie of many lies, and it's all about being practical, right?
It really, and it, again, in a political kind of climate, but also in a scientific climate and also a journalistic climate, what's the common phrase you hear? Truth to power.
Yeah.
And Bucky used to, in his speeches, would often berate the scientists of the world, who, as he said, should know better, to keep perpetuating this idea that that the sun going down every night is something beautiful.
Yeah.
And then when you point that out, usually the pushback or the argument is that it's practical to keep doing what we're doing.
Right.
And then there's a toss away that says, besides, everybody knows anyway that the world is not flat, it's round, type of thing. And so again, the argument coming back is, well, then why do we keep, why can't we change the language and still have it something practical for our kids to learn and understand?
Yeah. And why not insist on the truth? And why do I allow a word like try, which at best is ambiguous? As soon as I fail at something, I say, well, I tried. So there's something consistent about trying and failing. And yet, I let my kids keep trying. I let them use the word try.
Yeah.
It just boggles my mind,
Yeah.
Well, that, to me, I think that fits with Fuller's idea that we've got learning in school backwards. In other words, and Anne has spoken to this many times about, we expect kids to add up something in order to get as close to 100% as possible, the right answers. And if they fail and don't get the right answers, then we wrap their knuckles instead of saying, okay, what I now want you to do is identify all the mistakes that you made in trying to learn whatever it is they're trying to be learning. And I'll give you marks for the many mistakes that you can identify. So it and so you learn by trial and error, and you get rewarded for being willing to try and fail and try again.
Do you have a comment, Anne?
Richard, I'll add to that for you, because this was something that we've been dealing for a long time, and we've actually got the solution to that, and it was by accident that because we've been doing it, right? Then we realized, oh my God, this is the outcome of it was crazy. We just didn't expect it. In Asia, there is this whole big thing with doing corrections, right? And they make kids do pages of corrections. And then and if the students make a mistake in their grammatical error in an essay, they've got to copy the whole thing out. So a lot of the work that they gave kids to do is it takes a lot of time, And literally the amount of like what the children get out of it is very, very minimal, because when you copy, there are two. If you copy skills, right? If you copy skills, then you get better because you see someone better doing it. But when you're copying work, as in words, or you're copying corrections from somebody else's work that's correct, that can be a zero-sum game, completely zero-sum. And we've demonstrated that before when we had students who were so used to corrections that when we asked them to, look, do it again, I'll give you the term that we're using, and we've seen so many, so much good coming out of it. So if they're very, very used to copying, because the Chinese education, you copy a lot. Even if you want to answer a question, you have to copy the question first before you answer. A waste of time. I used to get homework where I had to copy what's in the textbook word for word, a page of it, you know, or more, just copying it into our books, and they became notes, our notes, but then they're not notes, they're just copying textbooks. So we've demonstrated to kids where we've gotten little children at a year old, and then we've got one of my secondary students at math answers. Okay, we gave it to the child to copy it out. Perfect. Copy it out perfectly. Next question is, did you understand what you're copying? Nope. Right in front of the older kids, just to demonstrate to them that copying is zero-sum. Nope, no clue what she just copied. Right? You can copy Chinese words and know nothing. You can copy German words and know nothing. Don't know how to read, you can't write it, and you don't even understand a word of it. We got kids we brought in scientific descriptions at, say, year 10, year 11, or even actual professional books, magazines, and or economic concepts, and we've got primary 1 kids to copy it out and ask them whether they understood anything they read. They wrote, nope. So this is just to even change out the minds of these older students who are so used to copying. I gotta tell you about the boy who, he said he didn't copy, and he said because he memorized. He wrote word for word because I was going to call the mom and say, look, he wasn't being scolded. I'm just saying that if he doesn't listen to what we're asking him to do, then I can't teach him, right? And so on the way down, before to call the mom, he told me, but Teacher Ann, I didn't copy, I memorized, which is very Asian. Okay, so it's like a human photocopier, right? So since I started working 38 years ago as a teacher, I've always gotten my students to upgrade their work. No corrections. We don't even give them a grade. It's just about helping them to identify the areas that they could do better. But then we don't talk about them doing better. We just talk it. We got to frame it in such a way where it makes sense to them. Like one of them is, like, I teach our kids how to like make their writing a lot more interesting, right? I mean, we're looking at the Western world versus Asia. We're so far behind when it comes to the language acquisition and the application and the writing of it. So I managed to break it down, chunk it down. And again, these are skills very Western, chunking things down, breaking it down. And so we tell the kids, okay, you need to add additional descriptive words. Then you need to you need to add statistics, make the action more interesting. So you just put down little things. Even a primary 1, 2, 3 kid can understand simple words like that. And then when they write and they come to you with their work, and I don't wait until they finish. It's after one paragraph they come over, and this is what I train my teachers to do. Now you look at their writing, and then you just point it out to them. Know this part here? Because you are you read a lot, you know more words than this, don't you? They say, yeah. Okay, why don't you see what words you can use to add to describe this person? So there is no corrections to be done, right? And we don't grade them. And then I say, okay, leave your paragraph there. Don't erase it. It's not incorrect. Now you write out the paragraph again and adding the things that, use more words than you know right now and that you've written right now, and use the words and just push it. My God, what comes out is crazy. And all we did is, the next thing we train our teachers to do is ask the kid, as a teacher, did I write it for you? No. Where did these words come from? They think they're in trouble. No, right? Like hesitantly, they say, myself. I say, yes, it came from you, right? So the teacher didn't tell you what to write. You're able to do it. And say that the only thing as a teacher we did was to push you to go and put a bit more thought into the work. We call this upgrading. The upgrading process is so powerful and so amazing. My kids would write the same piece of writing. It can be 3 pages, 5 times, because they understood this. They would do it for me 5 times without complaints, and they can see their work getting better and better. So the next question you ask them is, so which one do you like better? And they'll always point to the latest one that they did. That's it. You do it once, forever. You just continue to give them, to just let them know, okay. And then I also train them, when the kids write, you got to let them know this. Whenever you point out all these things, it really diminishes them in their own minds, And you literally have to turn it around, make it visual, and say, look, you're capable of writing like this. You've seen it, but your first attempt is here. And the teacher knows you can do this. So did we look down at you or look up? They pause and they say that, yes, the teacher is looking up to them. Oh, that takes away the confidence part of it all. So we had to crack all this down. So we started doing this for math as well. And even the work they do for the sciences doesn't mean that the kids, they do a lot of the work in class and tutorials. What the teachers will do is go around. And if they make a mistake in answers, especially math, right? Math, the corrections are really, really off. You cannot just make them do corrections. They say, okay, now there's something wrong with the answer. Try it again. Do it again. Just do it again. Okay? And they will sit down and do it. Second try generally will get it right, because most of the time it's just carelessness, right? But then if they don't quite get it and they do it a third time, my goodness, some of them get it right there. Some of them just will never get there, because it's like the skills they have requires this amount of knowledge, but they only have this much. So they're not quite there to deal with it. But the fact that they did 3 times, and when you take them through the answers and the thought processes of it, they're like, wow, they get it. The wow moments come in. So we realize that this upgrading is so powerful. Across the school, we do upgrading. Wow. We don't do corrections. And parents come after us because the entire country and Asia and most places, they do corrections. Nope, it's upgrading. And upgrading is exactly like gamification of, why games become esports, become so addictive, is because, remember just now you're saying that it starts at 100%, there's only one way to go down. When you're doing work in school and you're doing exams, there's only one way to go, is down. But gamifying something is the reason why people are so addicted to games, is that there's no limit to your marks, to your points. They just keep giving you points, and the points just keep growing. And I play Wordscapes. Somebody has got 450 million points. I'm at 3.9 million, and I'm dying trying to get to that 4 million, right? 450 million. And so any game you play, there's no limit. It just goes up and up and up and up. There is no 100%. The reason why I'm familiar with this is because we created the first chemistry role-playing game in our school, never seen before. We were in GDC, we launched it in San Francisco. We actually got a lot of, we've got kind of a fair bit of awards coming out of it as well. But the problem is we were marketing in the wrong country. But anyway, coming back to this, so I got to know more about gaming, and that's how it works. So, and then I realized many years ago, without understanding gaming, I had students' work that came in so beautifully written. I didn't expect that kind of caliber. I gave the college student 15 out of 10 marks. I said, I can't give less than that. It's beyond a 10. And if I gave a 10, I would be so wrong with the students' work, right? So from there, I realized, oh my God, we don't have to be limited by those marks that the exams are giving, you know. We looked at bonus marks, like trial papers. We have this amazing race where it doesn't go at 100. The kids can end up with 185 points, I don't care, you know, but it drives them. So in the exam they'll do the extra things that you're asking them to do to be able to handle the exam papers better. So we literally change all that out, just to give you an idea, because since we're talking about and so coming back to education, a bit about psychology here. A lot of work that we've been giving kids for a few hundred years, yeah, in college, in schools, they are all invisible. You're absolutely right, they're all invisible. Till today, we're still teaching kids invisible stuff, right? And we found out from this mathematician from Australia, his name is Sandy Sanderson. I'm not sure if he's around anymore, but I went through his training called Mortensen Math in Singapore. He was in Singapore. And so he said that, this comes under Jerry Mortensen, who created this math program. Children, they need to learn from concrete from a young age, because it's how their minds work. But when we do 2 + 3 and make them draw lines as in 5, then you have 2 and 3 here. You know, you put a 2, a 3, 2 circles with lines, or you go 2 + 3, 5. They're all abstract. And kindergarten, they're still in concrete mode. They cannot see the abstract part. And he said, Jerry Mortensen said that psychologically, it's the age where young people understand abstract concepts well is at 16. We spend an entire, years from the age of 4 or 3 all the way to 16 teaching them abstract concepts. Alphabets are abstract. The numerical numbers are abstract. Okay, everything is abstract. Plus, minus is abstract. Time is abstract. If you want to see how in Malaysia, primary 6, when they're learning percentages, the word questions that come out is asking them to calculate interest rates in banks, asking them to calculate profit margins, discounts, when they have absolutely no concepts of those at 12 years old, 11 years old. But that's the kind of questions they're being asked. They can't even apply it, and they do badly, and the kids get punished. This is just the beginning. We have gone through all this, and we've broken everything down to the point where anything we couldn't stand, we changed it out. So all the learning, all the way up to even year 11, there is the concrete that supports everything we're teaching the students. And to make it clear that the students can understand it, my sister from the math, she's the engineer, I'm the language person. So my sister, the civil engineer, she will run things by me. Now, because I'm non-math inclined, so I don't see concepts up here, mathematical concepts in my head, right? And I'm part of the 80% of students being taught by math inclined people. Okay, so my brain doesn't work that way because I'm non-math inclined. And so Melinda sometimes will run through, is it clear for you, this explanation? And I'll tell, okay, you lost me here. So there's a gap here because there's no image for me, and therefore the image will not be there for most children. But I can verbalize the things that I cannot see. They cannot. So we actually broke down the learning of math all the way down to kindergarten to get the kids the concrete, and we changed out the way math is taught. Okay. And we also understand, I can't roll this out to people teaching math, because even Sandy Sanderson said they're the hardest to change. The mathematics teachers are the hardest to change. And he said that, having trained people who wanted to know Mortensen math all over the world. Very interesting, right? So that's just to give you this, and now this information is out there, that abstract ability to understand and be able to understand abstract things is at 16. No education system has made any changes to how they're teaching and making it concrete, very deliberately concrete. Okay, yeah, this is just one of those things that we just need to keep going and just proving it and growing more of our schools and teaching it. So once you get to a certain size, then people will start listening. And you'll be happy to know that my ex-student, he bought a reading system from UK. It's called Me Books. The people who created it they had a few other projects, so they didn't have time to grow this further. And one of the books is read by Benedict Cumberbatch. That's how cool it is. So anyway, he bought it over from Malaysia, and because he's trained by I personally, when he went through my English program, he wanted to make English available to children in Asia, and encourage local writers and so on. So now because of this program that he has, it's amazing. You read, but there's interaction. Not talking about just pressing. You can record your voices. You can choose, like we have a picture like this of 4 of us. If I want to make the lady in that that famous painting behind you, Joe.
Yeah, Girl the Pearl.
If I want to make that lady speak, all I need to do is hold on and do a circle around it, and I press down on it, and I can record my voice, or the kids can record their voices in any voice that they want to emit or to create, and you let it go. And then when you press it, that painting will be speaking. So we've been making our students do a lot of recording, putting sound effects in, and they can choose whatever. So these are all side scripts, okay, that goes with the books. It's amazing. So anyway, he's been working very closely with the government, trying to get in with the government for 2 years. Finally, he's gotten in with one of the state governments in Malaysia, and they want that book to be in all kindergartens, 3,600 kindergartens in Malaysia. He can't do it. We're going to be doing it. We are partnering up.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah. So we're going to be that book. Oh my God, that book going in will do such an amazing thing for Malaysia, right? So we will know how to train, and we have access to the results because we're using it for our students. And it's the same skills that I'm using to train English. We hack the process of learning English. We call it the natural way. We call it English experience, the natural way. So you got to teach English as an experience, and it's not experiential learning. No, experiential learning is completely overused, the terminology for it. So it's the natural way. How native speakers learn it is how we're teaching it. But in Asia, we all teach ESL. So yeah, you teach ESL for 11 years, you will get English as a second language as a result. There's no native speaker that went through ESL to get native speakers L1. None. So why in the world are we even doing that in Asia? You get so a lot of things we actually looked at the fact that it didn't make sense, and we started changing it all out. But I'm just giving you some of the stuff, and now we are going to be doing it for and we are now working out terms with the Sarawak government, and on the federal side of the country, another ex-student is working with this ex-student. My ex-student is my partner. We became partners he was 19, and he owns the schools together with me. And so he has been asked to go together to talk to the government in the federal side. That one, they want to roll out the Me books across the country. Across the country. And we
Yeah.
get to train the teachers across the country. My God, I'm like, we are so stoked at the moment. Yeah, because we've got a very, very strong teacher training program that we created ourselves, very practical one. And it got certified by Finland. And we scored 96% on the pedagogy and philosophy. I know I've never talked about this, but since we're doing this, we live in a world of invisibles. We have been creating and making that change for a long time. So once I'm more settled with how we get connected with to the government, and also the thing that we want to change all the way, which is beyond what the government can handle right now. I really want to, take that up to get connected with the director of Bucky Fuller Institute. Because I really would like their if you have the science backing behind it and everything that Bucky is talking about, oh my God, I can't wait for that. And I would love to have a Bucky school.
Oh, wow.
Well, I've taken
Okay.
some notes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so
I have some. I love this idea of upgrading rather than correcting.
Yes, no
Because
upgrading.
if I correct, I hit 100%. If I'm upgrading, I can always upgrade. I can
Yes.
continue to upgrade. I just love this. There is no 100%.
Yes.
I mean, isn't that the problem with the sun setting? The sun just set,
exactly.
it's done, it's 100%. But no, the sun's still going, or the earth is still going. Something else is happening, but the sun is not set.
Yeah.
Just this
that's-
brain can get stuck.
Yes, it does. And there's more actually for that getting stuck part. Yeah. I did ask my science people to push the language, but they don't know how to push on the language side. And one of these days I'm gonna have to go in and do something about that with the students, right? The thing about the languaging, yeah. We are changing out how people talk about education being dumbed down. Yeah. We changed out the kindergarten. I didn't want to touch kindergarten because that's not my forte. But when we started getting kids coming in from other kindergartens into our school, we're like, my God, the facts are incorrect. You know how we go around asking people what is a tomato? Okay. The science people with science background will tell you it's a fruit. The rest, like me, will say it's a vegetable, right? But scientifically, it's incorrect. It's a fruit. Because fruits are, they hold seeds, right? It's a fruit. So then I start saying, oh, so then they get that. So those who got that tomato is a fruit. I said cucumber is a fruit too. Huh? Cucumber is also a fruit. Ladies' fingers is a fruit. Huh? Yes. Then brinjals are fruit. Really? So it's really funny to watch. So, but then they're learning it wrong in kindergarten, primary school.
Yeah.
Right.
And I got it wrong for 50 over years.
Right.
Well, the two things that Fuller often talks about, and certainly I know I talk about those two things, is this idea of the sun going up or down, and the idea of well, the in and out idea. And the third one that's really, I think kids would love is that we are all taught that the wind blows from the northeast or the southwest or wherever it might be. And Fuller pointed out that the wind does not blow. The wind sucks. And I think kids would get the greatest kick out of sort of talking about the wind sucks, sucking winds, and to understand how the air movements sort of occur.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Richard. The one thing is this, yeah. I actually because I teach the figurative language side of language, right? And because I do a lot of literature, that's my background. I find that a lot of the scientific books, including Discovery magazines or National Geographic, they are so figurative. It's beautiful. The way they describe facts is poetic. So the one thing is that that's why when we talk about languaging, I'm really in that kind of two. I'm like it's a double thingy, because when you say the sun setting or going down, it is actually figurative. You know, the wind blows, it's personification, which is figurative. You know, so and I share with the students that when you look at the books, you think that learning the language, the figurative side, is like what we call Asians call flowery language. It is not. It's just very poetic. So I'm not quite sure. Like we can point it out to the kids. They need to know the actual thing. But then you have this figurative part of the language, which they're not facts at all. You do find. I've done this in the college at the college level, where I got my students to bring in a lot of they bring me all the textbooks, economics, physics, chemistry, law. They brought it all in. I said that you need to learn figurative language. Let's see which books they appear in. They appeared in all the scientific books. Law has a lot. The only book I couldn't find in was what they call there's one lesson. Okay, I can't. It's not global perspective. It's they learn. It's actually about people and cultures, right? This is the Canadian system. There's one particular subject. See, it's tip my tongue. It can't come up. When I remember it, I'll let you know. So there's one subject which is the more descriptive. They're like telling you, and that one does not have. Imagine my scientific books, the math books, have got figurative language. Economics books, Far Eastern Economic Review, Fortune Magazine, Forbes, all have got figurative language in it. But not that particular book, which is more human. It's about humans. Oh my God, I cannot remember. Okay, never mind. When I remember, I'll let you know. Okay. But you get one. Yeah. So that's one I'm like.
There's the story of Fuller, who wrote an article, an academic kind of article for a major magazine like the New Yorker or something like that, and they rejected it, and so they told him to rework it, or it had to be rewritten in order to be acceptable. So what he did, he took it word for word and he turned it into poetic prose. And he sent it in and they accepted it and said, "Why didn't you write that in the first place?" He said, "I did." Word for word.
Oh my God. Do you have that example? That would be brilliant.
I'll see if I can find it. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, if you can. If not, it's okay. It doesn't matter. But just the idea of it's brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah, but that's the point I'm getting at. But anyway, I'm done with that world of invisibles.
There's quite a bit there.
What's really beautiful about what you've done too is that you've turned the invisible to us about your classroom work and teaching work into something visible and creative and concrete, in the sense of understanding more of just what you are actually doing in terms of swapping out old ways of doing things and replacing it with something new and different. And
yeah, thank you. Yeah, for the kids' sake, has to be done. The poor things, they're getting punished left, right, and center for something that's really not their fault at all. And everything in school, the teachers, they take no responsibility, and it's all the children's fault. And I pointed it out to some parents. I told them, I said the kids, if they can't sit still in class, they're considered fidgety. Teachers complain to parents that the kids are fidgety. And they're kinesthetic kids, oh my God, right? And then the kids that they looking away in the distance or looking at something else, they say, oh, kids are easily distracted. They don't do homework. kids are lazy. There's nothing on the teachers, no responsibility. All the blame goes on the children, because what is the teacher's responsibility? To hold their attention, right? Your job is to hold their attention by making it so exciting that whatever interesting is going on outside, they still are focused on you. So what are you doing to harness that energy where they have to move, right? And so everything is the kids' fault. And they get back, they get punished because the teachers complain about the kids. In schools, they get punished for being distracted. And just by having those words thrown at you your entire primary school life, you just imagine, So it's just unacceptable. And
Well,
maybe one last, sorry.
Well,
Carry
I
on.
was just going to say it's another kind of tie-in to Bucky's philosophy of reform the environment, not the individual.
Yes.
So it's like reform the teacher in terms of
Yeah.
how can you gain the focus to where you want it to be, and not blame the kid.
Yep. Oh, I love this. Thank you for that reminder.
Well, I have another perspective here too that blows me away. That quote from Bucky about 99.99% of everything that affects our lives cannot be detected by human senses. This is actually a complementary to or an auxiliary of the idea that only 0.0001% of the universe is visible.
Mhm.
I love this because this is saying that 99.999% of everything that affects my life is invisible. I mean, to me, that has much more impact. And I've said the other thing many, many times, but I just like this. I'm going to switch this around, and as many times I'm sticking with the 99.999% that affects my life is invisible rather than what is visible, because all of it's affecting my life.
Mm.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for all that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most basic form, that's wisdom, and I mean, in the sense that you understand what percentage of your life you actually have under control.
Yeah. And
So
yet,
what can
how much
actually
it is
change.
affecting. Yeah.
I know, so I mean, that comes down to, yeah, that is wisdom. I mean, because the stuff that you don't control, it's being able to put that aside and focus on your energy on the part that you can. That's an efficient use of energy.
Yeah.
So I mean, essentially that efficient use of energy that's wisdom.
Yep. Okay, so it might be appropriate to read the footnote, which is cited up here under, for example, before we got to those two quotes.
Yep.
This footnote explains these quotes. So if you want to finish with that footnote, Joe.
Yeah, these statements were included in many of Fuller's lectures. I am quoting from memory and from personal notes made over the years. Hereafter assume this to be the source unless otherwise referenced.
Cool. I like that convention in the book writing. I mean,
Yeah,
look, she's out to disclose exactly where this is coming from. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say it reinforces almost everything that Anne just said about how kids learn, because she's telling us there that somehow or another she has remembered and captured and integrated an awful lot of this, to the extent that she's even prepared to say that she's the source.
Yeah.
And that I mean that speaks so much to what I think Anne is saying about some of her graduating students, and what they remember and what they are now putting to work in a practical kind of way.
Yeah.
That they then become the source rather than some other reference or literature or journalistic source. And yet, Amy says, there will be times that I will make reference to the particular literature
Right.
of somebody else. Yeah. Oh,
You
and
know,
that's pretty gutsy to put a footnote like that in there.
yeah. Joe, did you have something else to add there?
I mean, and just in a way, and it comes back to this idea of coming up with a model to replace the old model. Is this you have to have a full understanding. So for Bucky to be able to do the things that he did, he actually understood the model that needed to be replaced. So I think of just Anne's example of her students that were copying, or students that were copying. They don't even necessarily understand the model, so they can't replace it. So it's that way of learning, you're kind of learning. And when you're able to write things in your own notes, the way Amy has, that means that she has a full understanding of the concepts themselves. And that she's able to capture those. And the fact that she's been able to put it on a practical level. I was talking to somebody about this earlier. It's that, well, and Anna was just mentioning it, it's the ability to go from the abstract to the concrete. And there's an ability there. That's a gift. But it's also an inquiry. And you have to be really curious. And and I do think that there is more times than not been an over intellectualization. So by dealing in concretes and being able to go between concrete and abstracts, that you're not over intellectualizing anymore. And I really liked what Anne said with the idea of natural learning.
I have a comment on that, and I think that in spite of, or notwithstanding, or in addition to everything that's been said about this, we're facing a dilemma with AI.
Yeah.
We have an AI that hallucinates, and yet we have an opportunity to actually document, because of the nature of the context, the nature of the data, the metadata that's being gathered. We do actually have an opportunity over the next 20 years to actually document where these words come from, where these words were first said, in what context were they said. Suddenly, I'm not only seeing just a stream of footnotes saying first said in 1252 BC by such and such a Philistine, and then quoting down every time that word was used, but now we'll actually click on that and actually see a hypermap of exactly the context within which that word was being used. And to be able to put those maps together to determine that, hey, when it was used this way, it had no context. It didn't mean anything with how it's being used over here on this side of the planet, right? It's connected here, but there's a completely different philosophy or context of concepts relating to the use of this word. To me, this is a real opportunity that we have with, I think it's called megadata. There's something called when you use these large language models and you have this giant data set. Eric Schmidt, I just listened to an interview of him, former CEO of Google, and he was talking about these contextual frames within which the AI is producing its data. So there's another point regarding the statement of sources. Cool. There's my 2 cents. Any other thoughts, comments, questions, or modalities before we move ahead? Who wants to read more? Anybody else want to read?
Steve, why don't you take it on as well?
Okay. Start right there and later.
think Steve,
Can you guys see that?
yeah.
Okay, good. So we're starting there at the bottom of page 4 and later.
Um, and later he takes his keys out of his pocket and carelessly tosses them into the air. Gravity takes care of the landing. So Steve, I don't know if you wanted to read or what, or but
No, did that statement make clear in its context? I
um,
discussed so many things. I'm concerned about what that context was actually.
Well, there's a quote below it.
Oh, I see. And later he takes out his keys. So if we look at the next page, we're going to get the context. Okay, got it. Thank you. And does someone else want to read here?
Yeah, I mean, I can read.
Good. Joe's going for it if nobody else wants to rotate in. So
I mean, I don't
I
mind
can read
either
it.
way. Okay.
go for it, Richard. I enjoy a little diversity.
Okay. Talking about the keys, but I was saying nature doesn't have to have department meetings to decide what to do with those keys or how to grow a turnip. She knows just what to do. It must be that nature has only one department, one coordinating system.
Yeah.
These simple truths each relate to different aspects of synergetic geometry. But for all of his lighter anecdotes, Fuller's underlying message could not have been more serious. The fact that 99% of humanity does not understand nature is the prime reason for humanity's failure to exercise its option to attain universally sustainable physical success on this planet. The prime barrier to humanity's discovery and comprehension of nature is the obscurity of the mathematical language of science. Fortunately, however, nature is not using the strictly imaginary, awkward, and unrealistic coordinate system adopted by and taught by present-day academic science, which is the three-dimensional coordinate system, the 90-degree coordinate system I think he's referring to. Nature is instead using the principles embodied in synergetics, which thus provides the way to eradicate this prime barrier to our ability to understand science. Claiming to have discovered no less than the mathematical system that describes the coordination of physical and metaphysical phenomena alike, that is, of both energy and thought, Fuller was urgent in his insistence that we study these principles. I am confident, he says, that humanity's survival depends on all of our willingness to comprehend feelingly the way nature works. From geometry to geodesics, a personal perspective. What college student would not be overjoyed to receive an invitation to work on ever more relevant affairs from a personal hero? That is precisely what I found in my mailbox in 1980 when Buckminster Fully actually answered my letter. The timid plea of an undergraduate. What can people do toward furthering your vision of making this planet work for everyone? And where can I apply the experience of having studied synergetics? She says. I was later to understand that Fuller's responding to an undergraduate's letter was not unusual, but rather indicative of his profound trust in the integrity and capability of human beings, and especially of youth. His action was typical of his life and work, which he relied heavily on intuition with a powerful faith in the willingness of others to apply their minds as diligently and joyfully as he applied his. When we have to take Fuller at his word when he claims to be not a genius, but in quotes, an average healthy human being, end of quote, who exercised his option to think. He embraced that potential in all of us. You know, given our earlier discussion and Anne's, explanations and information to us, I really hope her ears are burning. Because everything that's just been said in that is exactly what's going on between Anne and her students and Anne and her instructors. Um, and this faith in the youth.
You mean the trust that's been established referring
That's right.
to?
Yeah, I mean, that last sentence, or last two, if I replace Anne's name with Fuller, just down at the bottom, we have to just go down to the bottom there.
Down to the bottom, we haven't read that yet.
Yeah, no,
He ended up with Nature Works. We ended up right here. I do believe we haven't read From Geometry to Geodesics yet.
yeah, I just read it.
Yeah, we just we keep
sorry.
going down, Steve. We just
Yeah, we
read
just
about that. Yeah, that's her personal receiving the letter thing.
Anyway, I'm just saying that if we have to take Anne at her word when she claims to be not a genius, but an average, healthy human being who exercised her option to think, she embraced that potential in all of us.
Agreed.
I mean, I can see one of her students writing that very thing about his or her memory of going to school under Anne and the teachers in her system tutelage over whatever period of time that they were in their classroom with them. So anyway, that's why I said I hope your ears are burning, Anne, because it just
It is. Thank you so much. Yep. We never thought it'd come to this, but thank you. Thank you. It's beautiful.
I mean, it says a lot. Your student actually went to, I mean, you know, well, your past students still keep in touch with you about, or in one particular instance, obviously, that you're helping them in their business. That is a level of trust that doesn't exist between teachers and students today, and that is essentially why the model needs to change.
Yeah, and the other thing is the serendipity of Fuller reading her letter. I've read other stories about that whole experience. And he gets thousands of letters. And she just wrote just a very brief kind of inquiry and asked a couple of questions. And somehow or another, he put his hand on her envelope and her letter and read it and then replied the way he did, because what he did was apparently he just wrote her back and said, well, yes, here's the answer to those two questions. You can come and work for me or with me.
Oh.
And she was hired.
Cool.
And the story goes, I think it's embellished a bit, but the story goes that he hired her to do exactly what we are reading now, to translate his way of talking into something that was a little bit more understandable by the ordinary citizen, and and that they were going to go to a presentation in October of 1983 in order to start to get her orientated to this whole translation kind of experience. And instead of them going to that session in October, he went up and died in July. And she tells a story, I think, in various ways that says Fuller knew well that he wasn't going to be at that October meeting with me. He knew I was going to be on my own, and he had that kind of trust in me that I would go forth with what eventually became the Fuller explanation book.
Cool. Any other comments or questions? The reason I was stuck up here, this is the reason why I wasn't looking down any lower. I just wanted to bring up two things here. This reminds me of Greg Braden's book, The Lost Mode of Prayer, where emotionality in my experience of nature is a critical aspect. He talks about going with a Navajo, a Dene Indian, to do a rain dance. And his story is really wonderful. If you are interested, you can look that up, Greg Braden, Lost Mode of Prayer, and maybe I'll find that link and throw it in there. But I also want to bring out that's exactly how we start and end our meetings. How are you feeling? And what are you anticipating, or what did you take away? Because how I feel about a thing has everything to do with how I'm willing to engage with it. And I just think that's an important thing too. Any other comments or questions? Okay. I think we have enough time to read another, at least get started on this page. Let's see what happens. Who wants to read?
How am I reading?
I'll help out with this one.
Good.
Okay.
I was introduced to the intricate discipline of geometry in a Harvard course, Synergetics, the structure of ordered space, taught by the editor of this series, Arthur L. Loeb. And I had been fascinated by this material for a couple of years. Reconciled to its obscurity, I was enchanted by the perfection and the complexity of this body of geometric knowledge, which was all but completely hidden from popular awareness. In those days, Loeb's course was similarly hidden, a bizarre option within the 2-inch thick course catalog, taught in a sequestered attic in Server Hall, where one would never wander accidentally. My peers had no doubt that there was a reason for that. In fact, my academic pursuits were perceived by most as an irreverent cross between kindergarten games and mathematical torture. My roommates, however, forever tripping over cardboard tetrahedra and unsuccessful tensegrity wheelbarrows while gingerly avoiding many deposits of Elmer's glue, were tolerantly confused. I can't blame my classmates for their bemused head shaking. I troubled taking myself seriously. Mathematical elegance aside, I felt deep down that I'd chosen an unbelievably fascinating road to nowhere, a choice that would limit my chance of meaningful participation in human affairs. But still, I was trapped like an addict immune from better judgment in my polyhedral playpen. Then one February evening, I heard Fuller speak at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It's easy to understand how pivotal the experience could be, in love with geometry, but distressed by its non-applicability. I heard Bucky Fuller that night spin out in an omnidirectional web of ideas, predictions, and obscure but brilliantly juxtaposed facts, an unfamiliar version of world history in which synergetic geometry and other aspects of comprehensive thinking somehow played a crucial role in rescuing humanity from its current crisis of squandering vast resources in an unwinnable arms race. We are suddenly at a turning point in history at which it is possible to provide adequate life support for everyone, declared Bucky. Malthus is obsolete. He didn't know about alloys. There is no such thing as a straight line. The sun does not go down. And it's time we updated our language.
Want to read the footnote?
See later chapters, especially chapter 3, Systems and Synergy for Explanation of Alloys, and chapter 16, Design Science, for discussion of Malthus. Yeah, could we maybe look into that next
Look
week?
into what?
He talks about alloys. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
what he
I'm sorry.
We're going to get there, chapter 3.
in synergetics, and the design design science and discussing Malthus, what he said about Malthus?
I think that's in this book, and that's in
Yeah,
chapter 16 in this book.
Is it this book? Not
Yeah.
synergetic, is it?
yeah, it's in this book, chapter
Oh,
3
right. Okay.
and chapter 16.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That'll be okay. Then we can wait. That's all right.
Cool.
Yeah,
Any-
I mean,
Go ahead.
now this really gets to the heart of ephemeralization on a very deep level. So I mean, yeah, I mean, this is something that that a lot of people didn't understand about nature in general. And that was the efficient use of energy and the transformations that actually can then occur in order to use resources and not necessarily have to take an extractive approach to economics.
Now that page went pretty fast, so I'm thinking we can read page 7 and I think we can finish off this section of the book without any trouble. We have a few minutes left. So, Anne, do you want to continue? Do you want to read one more
Sure.
page?
Sure. A more mesmerizing discourse I have never heard. I skipped back home down Massachusetts Avenue. Not that I could have told you exactly how it worked, this planetary success, but I was sold. My geometry had relevance. I still can't explain exactly how synergetics is going to turn the world around, but I found at least that I can explain synergetics. My hope is that if enough other people become aware of these principles, the missing pieces will ultimately come together. So far, this has been a valid working hypothesis. In teaching workshops to clarify Fuller's material, I've met people who found significant applications in their own work. Synergetics has provided both useful models to elucidate scientific phenomena and methods of solving structural problems. Examples of both aspects will be cited throughout the book. See especially the end of chapter 15, case in point, Donald Ingber, which can easily be read independently of the rest of the book. After Fuller's lecture, the next step was clear: read synergetics. If I expected easy answers, I was in for a surprise. Fuller's ambiguous writing called for considerable interpretation. With the patient guidance of Arthur Loeb, I struggled through Fuller's massive text and
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading along in the book.
Yeah,
Forgot.
that's okay. I've got the book
Okay,
here
here
too,
we
but
come. There we go.
okay, I struggled through Fuller's massive text and learned the truth, that truth was far more elusive than he had made it sound that night at MIT. But the geometry was no less seductive, and ultimately I decided to risk a 13-cent stamp. And then his unexpected letter arrived. In response to my earnest but decidedly indirect questions, even a photocopied list of organizations were being received with glee. How it was that my letter filtered through the procedural maze that lay between Buckminster Fuller and the formidable stack of mail that was opened and sorted by various trusted assistants every day, I'll never know. The signature was real. Dear Amy Edmondson, I would like to take advantage of your offer to come and work with me. I'm busier and busier with ever more relevant affairs. Warmly, faithfully, Buckminster Fuller. That's so sweet. Ever more relevant affairs, a college student's dream, and she is convinced after 3 years of first-hand acquaintance, an accurate description of Fuller's experience. Even with a healthy dose of skepticism about some aspects of his philosophy, one could not help being stunned by his tireless enthusiasm for work. At 4 times my age, he was awake and working before I arrived, and long after I crept home to bed exhausted. The secret of his energy was his conviction that humanity had a viable option of designing an unprecedentedly successful environment abroad. aboard spaceship Earth, and that his work might might play an important part in that. I found that the more deeply involved in that actual work I became, in my case, calculations and drawings of Fuller's geodesic dome projects, the more impressed I was by the scope of his vision. Bucky was extraordinarily generous with his time, perhaps due to an uncontrollable urge to teach, and treated every listener as an intellectual equal. This might be called a skillful teaching strategy, except that it was utterly spontaneous. One of the most important lessons of my 3-year experience was the difference between Bucky, on the other side of his desk, spontaneously lapsing into simple, clear explanations as a result of the catalyst of a pair of expectant human eyes, which would cloud into a worried frown when lost, and Buckminster Fuller's dense polysyllabic prose in the 800 pages of synergetics. Oh, there's more to it up to operational mathematics?
Yeah, you left off right there.
Okay, I became accustomed to translating the Fullerese into lay English for various befuddled readers who went so far as to call the office for help. This is not a book about those 3 years. It is about synergetic geometry. Here I've only tried to give you some of the background that's led me to attempt to explain what is in many ways unexplainable, for no one can speak for Bucky Fuller but himself. The goal of this volume is to help readers get through the barriers imposed by Fuller's idiosyncratic use of language, and to introduce the major concepts of synergetics in an accessible format. The next steps are up to all of us.
Comments and questions?
Yeah, I have a comment that has to do with his full attention that he gave to everybody, little kids, adults, etc. That Hugh Kenner was a really close colleague of his, and he's actually wrote the first sort of biographical book on Fuller. And quite by accident, well, actually, it wasn't an accident. I guess it was accidental in the sense that I became connected with his youngest daughter, Hugh Kenner's youngest daughter, through one of the space camps that the Buckminster Fuller Institute started during COVID. And then I discovered that that daughter lives in Chicago and has been working as a school teacher, and a special mission or vocation has been working with incarcerated men in Cook County Jail, one of the toughest jails around, apparently, and teaching them to write their own story, to write their book of their lives, and to do the kind of things that, again, I think Anne has been doing, is that to get them to express through their own story and feel the accomplishment of being able to do that. Doesn't matter whether it gets published or not. It's just that they've done that. Anyway, she spoke to the Trim Tab group a year or so ago, and when the Kenner family and the Fuller family lived in Santa Barbara, the two men would get together on weekends and just yak away. And the young daughter, just as a little 5, 6, 7-year-old kid, she would wander into the living room where the two men were talking, and they never kicked her out. They never said, "Go away, we're busy." They included her, and she remembers all of that. She remembers actually engaging in discussions with these two men, her father, and probably what she might have thought was a favorite uncle or grandfather kind of man. And so it just punched home this idea of him willing to listen and pay attention to everybody. Didn't matter what age they were, what class that they came from, what experiences they had. He would listen. And that going, one other thing, and this is really important for me to say this with Joe here, is that that's what is in my lasting impression of CJ. Because CJ and I got into a conversation after we met on the Zoom, and I thought he was criticizing something that I had written that I didn't really take too kindly to, but that started a dialogue. And so I wanted to learn more about CJ and comprehensive thinking and all that kind of thing. And when we got into a dialogue, it was hard to get CJ helping me understand his comprehensivity, because as soon as you say something, it triggers an interest in him, and he switches it around and says, "Hey, tell me more. I'm really interested in what you're doing and what you're thinking." And you had this feeling of saying, "No, CJ, I don't want you to listen to me. I want you to inform me." But that was just his nature. And Joe probably has way more stories than that for me than mine to say, yeah, that was CJ. That was his signature. He would listen to everybody and learn as much from that dialogue for himself as he might be helping someone else learn something about what he was getting at. So so it just brought up the Hugh Kenner story, and it brought up my very brief connection and dialogue period with CJ.
I
Yeah.
think that, you know, I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, I mean, that was CJ would inquire, but the really beautiful part is the part that he would go back and work in order to make the next dialogue that much more engaging.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like he would actually just take in that he had a way of giving back. You know, I don't know to what extent he knew Amy Edmondson, but you know, Fuller did the same for her, and in some way, I guess there's some degree that she's must have seen that in CJ, and good people find good people.
Joe, do you want to, any other comments or questions before we close? Joe, how are you feeling and what are your takeaways today?
Well, you know, I appreciate that last share, Richard. You know, especially you know, as well as the prisoners share their story, because nobody, you know, kind of cares, but when they write their story, you know, they feel like somebody cares, I guess, and or they care about themselves. So it's important. You know, there's a lot of takeaways. I really appreciated what and all that you shared. I mean, I had quite a few notes. You know, I know some people that are actually doing some very interesting things along the lines of gamification and learning. And not only gamification and learning, gamification and life. Yeah, that's a long conversation, but yes, that I think is a really important part of keeping people engaged in a healthy way. I think a lot of the, you know, discussions around language. You know, one thing I will say is that I can imagine that, you know, Amy having to work to go through that translation. And there have been some things I've read about translation, and where, you know, going through that process, you know, it's a challenging process, but what you learn, I guess, is you learn about yourself. And so as much as you learn the material. And that's a very valuable lesson. You know, that's the point of language in a way. It's what we can learn about ourselves as much as what we can learn about the topic. So yeah, I mean, from that perspective, I think that that's, you know, that was really important. and I think that last page, or the page before, where we're essentially getting to the ideas of ephemeralization. I was in a, just a conversation earlier about nature and the five elements from an Asian perspective, and how that worked with change and transformations. And some of the transformations that could have never been envisioned that we're able to do today, without exploiting nature, is it's an important part of ephemeralization. I mean, it's the ethical part of ephemeralization, what I should say. Of course, it's an important part. Anyway, I need to be more careful with my own words. So with that, Anne, how do you feel? What are you taking away from today?
Okay. I want to thank Steve, Richard, Joe, every single one of you, okay? Because wherever I go with the education or what we do about it, you have a part in it because of this journey that I'm going through and this understanding. Everyone, your comments, your insights, they all play a role in what I've gotten out of it and what I'll be putting in. So just remember that where I go, all of you have your roles in there, and your inputs have been taken very, very seriously. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm looking at a few things that Steve, what you said as well about the feelingly, yeah, and yeah, that's one of the things we're driving. The kids have to feel. They have to feel. They can never remember if they don't feel. I'm not talking about boredom, excitement, the wow, the seeing the tragedy behind stuff, and all that. They need to see. They need to feel. So in our school, we have a very strong tagline for our marketing and our salespeople is you market emotions and you sell an experience. We have to deliver that experience. Okay. So it really fits right in the direction you're going with it, the feeling. And thank you for sharing with us that page that you in your book. Now I can see it. I can't wait to see the rest of it. Yeah, Steve, that one, it's very exciting. Thank you. This thing about the world of invisibles, that's going to go into the planning, like the part of the planning for the school that or the system that we feel that it should go. Yeah. So yeah, Richard, how do you feel, and what is your takeaway today?
Well, I certainly feel quite energized and energized and mobilized, but I'm still kind of reflecting on the beauty of what it's like for a graduate of your school to come back and work with you in a partnership way. I mean, that's got to be almost like a dream of any teacher. And a story that comes to my mind has to do again with getting high marks for something versus getting an experiential reaction to something you've done. When I had students writing their understanding of the tetrahedron and trying to apply it in my discipline, I certainly had students hated every sort of moment that I brought out this instrument. And then I had students write essays that talked about going from my nemesis to my ally, and how the tetrahedron got embedded in their head and they couldn't get rid of it. But one in particular was I saved the papers of 3 students in their graduating year, and I shared them with a colleague in California at the University of Southern California. And he in turn shared these papers with his students. And on the graduation night, with all of the students gathered, I was able to share a note with these three students that I just received from my colleague at USC. And he said, you know, what a treat it was to read these students' papers and how important it was in sharing it with other students and how they fed back something very positive about the papers. And in sharing that with the students who wrote the papers, you could tell that they could have got 120% for that paper as far as a mark was concerned. And what really meant something to them was to hear that somebody else in some other part of the world had read their paper and were impressed with it. And so I think that just underscores the importance of the feeling, because they will remember the feeling that they got out of that feedback far more than whether they got a B or a B plus or an A on that paper. So I take that away, and thank you, everybody, for helping me bring some of those memories together and matching them in with the kinds of things that we're talking about. So, Steve, how are you feeling, and what's your takeaway from this evening's readings?
Well, I'm stuck with this idea of this 99.99% of the things that are invisible that are affecting my life every day. And I think that's more true today than it was when Buckminster Fuller was around, considering 5G and considering all of the crazy memes and mental viruses that are going around in the world. So that's cool. I just enjoy everybody's feedback and sharing, and it's wonderful to share with you guys. And I found a couple of things about this Greg Braden lost mode of prayer, and I have a 17-minute video that is entitled "Feeling is Prayer," which I think has got to be. It's an excerpt. I also have a couple of more here where that are kind of exciting. So I'm just going to throw three links out. I'm not going to take the time to name one of the links, but I'm going to stick them in the chat right now, so they're a matter of record. And then if you have time to click on them and load them up, that's a wonderful thing. That's the first one. Feeling is Prayer, 17 minutes. Greg Braden. The prayer code is mirrored in the most sophisticated computer system in the world. Oh, and I see where it actually didn't include that third link. That's interesting. But if you do Greg Braden lost mode of prayer, and I'll put that in the chat, the whole book is out there on the internet. And it's a beautiful thing to consider. And it goes along with, if I'm just gonna, I seem to be on a riff here. In the New Testament, it talks about, in Matthew, it talks about, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. And a lot of people see that as a thing. Okay, go ahead and ask, but it doesn't just say ask. It says ask, and then it says seek, and then it says knock. And it's a process, it's a formula. So I ask, and then I go seek what I ask, and then when I find something, I knock, and then I start asking again and seeking again, and that's the process. And it has everything to do with feeling. So I'm just real thrilled tonight. We made some good progress. I'm going to take away this idea, Anne, of there is no 100%. I love this idea. I mean, how many times have I fooled myself? Well, I got it 100%. There is no 100%. It depends on, what step I'm on the ladder, right? Geez. So anyway, that's a big one. I'm taking that home for sure. Okay, I'm real grateful.
Let me just add one other thing in terms of when I was doing my graduate studies at McGill, and we had two sections of the course, one instructor teaching one section and another instructor teaching another. And the students in the other section were constantly getting A's for the work that they were doing. And in the section I was in, we couldn't, the top mark was like a B plus. Nobody could get anything higher than that. And so we were complaining about that's not fair, because on our transcripts, we're going to look like we're B plus students, and these other guys are going to look like they're A students, and they're going to get the jobs and we won't, you know, all that kind of worry. And so the teacher said, the professor said, well, I'm willing to give you A. If you can show to me that you know 100%, is basically what she was saying. And that shut us up quite quickly. But I think the message she really got across was this idea there is no 100%, and how well you actually do know the subject, and you get a B plus from me, I'm telling you that there's still a lot more to learn, and that you should take that in stride with your B plus, and, you know, quit bitching at me, I think was the idea.
So,
But I remember that way of teaching, that way of marking. I mean, that's 60 years ago now, and it's still right in front of me in terms of there is no 100%.
this calls back to I took in 66 or 67, I was at BYU, and I was trying to figure out, I had 5 minors and no major, and I was trying to figure out what to do. And I took this class on transformational grammar and syntax. It was being taught by the head of the linguistics department. And he said, look, and this is about the time that Noam Chomsky started to make his appearance on the scene. And in 1965, the whole linguistics thing was bankrupt, and they were waiting for a Noam Chomsky to step up, or a Steven Pinker, or somebody cool. And right now they'd hit a plateau. And he said, look, he said, everybody said, well, where's the book? There is no book. He said, I could teach you we get 8 different books. You get 100% in 8 of those books, and you wouldn't have any idea what linguistics is, because nothing we're doing is working. So
Right.
he said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to put a problem on the board, and I'm going to sit here and wait for you to figure it out. When you figured it out, we'll put another problem on the board. And he put up there, he ran. And he put his feet up on the desk and pulled out the newspaper and started to read it. I mean, people were going, what the hell? Just like you said, Richard, there were guys who were getting A's. They wanted that grade. They had to have it on their manuscript. And they were pulling their hair out. And but within a week, and we had, I think, 2 or 3 classes a week. Within a week, we'd figure out all the things that he ran could possibly have been.
Yep.
And then he goes, and then I think he ran fast was the next problem. I mean, you know, and he just built it up one problem at a time. And there is no 100%, because every time we figured it out, he'd add another stupid word in the stupid sentence, and the transformational grammar went apeshit. But and this is no jive, I got an A+ in that class, an A+, because we took the final and he threw out some hair-bone weird ass thing for a thing, and I put an answer down there. Nobody else did. It wasn't part of the curriculum. I put an answer, I got an A+, and I cannot tell you how disappointed I was. It came out as a 4.0. It's not 4.3 or 4.4, and I needed that 0.4. I needed it desperately, because I had 2.4s on other things. You know? So anyway, I learned about this 100% idea. And so, Anne, when you brought that up today, it just totally resonated for me. There is no 100%.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, even the idea that it creates an idea of perfectionism that actually can be very harmful. But I'll tell you, that professor's approach, Steve, is remarkable, because I'm thinking of, if you start thinking about all the things that could mean, then gradually you start to introduce concepts, more words that have temporal natures to them. So then you can start to put things into kind of context, and if you start understanding what each word means and its relationship to reality, that's pretty deep. I mean, that's pretty deep stuff. I mean,
so if you submitted a structure and you said he is the subject and run is the verb, or ran is the verb, you had to list a whole lexicon of verbs
Yeah.
to prove that every one of them would fit in that slot, you know? And it was just beautiful. It was just beautiful.
But that
Yeah.
means you understand the concept,
Yeah.
which means you can
I-
draw the boundary. I mean,
I had a student one time, I gave the assignment, I said, much as what you were kind of talking about, but I said, you can pick any kind of topic you want out of what we were studying. You can write a, like a book review and the entire textbook, or you could take a chapter, you could take a paragraph, you could take a word. And I had one student took up the challenge of, he wrote a comprehensive paper on one word. and it was brilliant.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's in the
And
beginning was the word. I mean, it's a, but really quickly, Richard, that in that prison program where the student or the
Inmates.
yeah,
wrote their stories. Are you still like are you still familiar with that or
yeah, actually, I've got the name. I could actually send you information. I'm just trying to think of their name now, but it's something like Con Prose or Prose Con, and it's a play on words in terms of their own lived experiences in the prison system.
it's just an idea is that, in the sense that somebody writes their stories, if they want somehow they get them out to people that read them. I don't know. It would probably mean a lot to them if they wanted that somebody actually read their stories, just like your students got their papers read.
Hmm.
It's no different. And it just shows you somebody cares. Anyway, may encourage somebody to write. It's just an idea more than anything else.
Well, I'll get you the right name and Kenner's the name of his daughter. And
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, it's just an idea that if somebody reads their stuff that, and yeah, it's helpful. That's all.
yes, thank you. Well,
Cool.
Are you getting that out now, Richard, or are you plan on forwarding it later?
what's that?
Are you going to get that out now, or you plan on forwarding it later?
No, I'll forward it. Yeah.
Okay, good. So we're complete.
Yeah.
All right, really cool. Thank you all.
Thank you. Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Bye.
Later.
Bye now.